Political observers are increasingly describing the current moment as a tipping point in American politics, particularly within the Republican Party. A growing number of voters who once supported Donald Trump appear to be distancing themselves, not because of a single event, but due to a convergence of controversies, governance concerns, and perceived ethical failures. This shift is being described as an internal fracture rather than a traditional partisan realignment. Former Trump supporters, including conservative commentators and right-leaning media voices, have begun publicly questioning the direction of the movement. What was once characterized by loyalty and ideological unity now shows visible signs of disillusionment. Critics argue that the movement has shifted away from policy-driven conservatism and toward personality-centered governance, creating discomfort even among longtime allies. The dissatisfaction appears rooted in a broader sense that national leadership has become disconnected from everyday realities. Many voters express frustration with what they see as chaos, distraction, and self-interest overshadowing governance. Rather than unifying the party, recent actions and statements have amplified internal tensions and exposed ideological inconsistencies. This moment is also marked by declining trust in institutions and leadership. For many voters, loyalty to party identity is being replaced by concern over democratic norms, economic stability, and social cohesion. Analysts note that this reassessment is not limited to traditional swing voters, but includes individuals who previously supported Trump consistently. As these dynamics unfold, the Republican Party faces a fundamental question: whether it can maintain cohesion under a leadership style increasingly viewed as polarizing, or whether voter dissatisfaction will continue to grow ahead of upcoming elections. The release of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein has intensified public scrutiny of political elites and institutional accountability. While millions of pages remain undisclosed, the documents already released have generated global reactions, prompting investigations and public reckoning in multiple countries. Within the United States, the controversy has taken on heightened political significance due to repeated references to Donald Trump within the material. Critics argue the public responses to the disclosures have been inadequate, particularly given the gravity of the allegations associated with Epstein's network. The perception that political figures may be shielded from consequences has fueled public anger and distrust. While some leaders have called for transparency, others have attempted to dismiss the significance of the documents altogether. Trump's response, asserting complete vindication, has drawn criticism given the volume and nature of references associated with his name. Opponents argue that declaring exoneration without full disclosure undermines public confidence and appears dismissive of broader accountability concerns. The controversy has become emblematic of a larger issue: whether political leaders are subject to the same standards as ordinary citizens. For many voters, the Epstein revelations reinforce the belief that power protects itself, regardless of party affiliation. As additional disclosures remain pending, the situation continues to evolve. Public pressure for transparency remains strong, and the handling of these revelations may have lasting implications for trust in leadership, legal institutions, and the political system as a whole. Concerns over civil liberties have intensified amid reports of expanded immigration enforcement tactics and statements suggesting limitations on constitutional rights. Critics argue that certain policies and rhetoric associated with federal agencies risk infringing on freedoms protected by the First and Second Amendments. Civil rights advocates have raised alarms about aggressive enforcement actions, particularly in communities already experiencing heightened fear and instability. The debate has shifted beyond immigration policy into broader questions about due process, freedom of expression, and voter participation. One of the most controversial concerns involves the potential presence of federal agents near polling locations. Legal experts warn that such actions could suppress voter turnout, particularly among marginalized communities. The issue has sparked renewed calls for legislative safeguards to ensure free and fair elections. Opponents argue that these tactics represent a departure from democratic norms and risk undermining public trust in electoral integrity. Even some conservative voices have expressed unease, noting that, historically, Republicans have championed constitutional protections and state authority. As the nation approaches critical election cycles, The balance between security enforcement and civil liberties remains a central point of contention. How these concerns are addressed may significantly influence voter engagement and confidence in democratic processes. Economic performance has become another focal point of public dissatisfaction. While official messaging has emphasized economic strength and recovery, recent data paints a more complex picture. Reports indicating significant job losses and market instability have contradicted optimistic narratives, leading to skepticism among voters. The volatility of cryptocurrency markets has further undermined confidence, particularly after high-profile endorsements positioned digital assets as a cornerstone of economic innovation. The sharp downturn has left many retail investors facing losses, fueling criticism of leadership credibility. Additionally, trade policies, including expanded tariffs, have raised concerns about rising consumer costs and long-term economic sustainability. Business leaders warn that unpredictable economic strategies risk discouraging investment and slowing growth. Energy policy has also emerged as a point of contention. Critics argue that restricting renewable energy development has increased utility costs, disproportionately affecting working families. Allegations of undue influence by fossil fuel interests have further complicated the narrative. For many voters, economic trust hinges not on rhetoric, but on lived experience. Rising costs, job insecurity, and market instability have created a disconnect between official claims and public perception, contributing to broader political dissatisfaction. Beyond policy disputes, cultural and symbolic actions have intensified public backlash. Critics argue that excessive self-branding initiatives and controversial imagery have shifted focus away from governance and toward spectacle. These actions have been perceived by many as divisive and inappropriate for national leadership. One incident that drew widespread condemnation involved the circulation of racially insensitive imagery targeting political opponents. The official response, framing the content as humor or satire, was met with strong criticism from civil rights organizations and political leaders across the spectrum. Such controversies have reinforced concerns about leadership tone and respect for social norms. Many voters view these incidents as emblematic of a broader erosion of civility and accountability in public office. Cultural disputes, while sometimes dismissed as distractions, often carry significant symbolic weight. They shape perceptions of leadership values and influence public trust. In this context, repeated controversies have contributed to fatigue and frustration among the electorate. As public discourse becomes increasingly polarized, calls for restraint, dignity, and responsible communication continue to grow louder, reflecting a desire for stability and respect in national leadership. Notably, criticism is no longer confined to traditional opposition voices. Prominent conservative commentators and media figures have begun openly questioning the administration's actions and priorities. This shift signals a potential realignment within right-leaning media ecosystems. Several commentators have expressed frustration with perceived evasiveness and lack of transparency. They argue that dismissing public concerns undermines democratic accountability and alienates voters who expected reform and responsiveness. This internal criticism reflects a broader reckoning within conservative circles about leadership expectations and political responsibility. While not universal, the growing dissent suggests weakening consensus and increasing fragmentation. The willingness of conservative voices to challenge leadership publicly marks a significant departure from earlier patterns of alignment. Analysts view this development as an indicator of declining confidence and potential electoral vulnerability. Voter interviews and election results reveal notable shifts among key demographics, including Latino voters and residents of traditionally conservative regions. Individuals who previously supported Trump have cited concerns over economic stability, immigration enforcement, and leadership style as reasons for changing their votes. These shifts highlight the importance of policy impact on everyday lives. Family unity, employment security, and community stability have emerged as central concerns driving voter decisions. In regions such as Iowa, voters have voiced disappointment with what they perceive as self-centered leadership and lack of accountability. These sentiments suggest erosion of support even in areas once considered politically secure. Such trends underscore the dynamic nature of voter behavior and challenge assumptions about fixed political loyalties. As economic and social conditions evolve, voter priorities continue to shift accordingly. Recent polling data indicates a significant decline in approval ratings, reaching levels not seen since earlier political crises. Analysts attribute this decline to a combination of policy dissatisfaction, ethical concerns, and negative public perception. Immigration enforcement tactics have played a central role in shaping public opinion. Surveys show increasing support for sanctuary policies and growing concern over perceived harshness in enforcement practices. These trends suggest a widening gap between official policy approaches and public sentiment. As approval ratings fall, political pressure intensifies, raising questions about electoral viability and governance strategy. Concerns about election integrity have prompted calls for legislative action to prevent voter suppression. Proposals include explicit prohibitions on law enforcement presence at polling locations. Advocates argue that safeguarding elections is fundamental to democracy. Any actions perceived as intimidating voters risk undermining legitimacy and public trust. Political leaders and civil society organizations emphasize the need for vigilance and proactive measures to ensure fair participation. The stakes, they argue, extend beyond individual elections to the preservation of democratic norms.